Kakadosh Erev Tov, we're actually starting tonight. This is going to be Smichat Chaver Shiur number 5, but we're going to start on Siman Pechet. Okay, remember that Siman Pechet is talking about distancing from meat and milk. We're going to have to fly through this entire Siman, and then we're going to continue from there. But remember that Siman Pei Zayin was the concept of the Doraitas, the Rabbanans. What is Basar v'Chalav? Are you allowed to benefit from Basar v'Chalav? And now what's going to happen is now we're going to continue with Siman Pechet, which means how much do we have to distance ourselves from Basar v'Chalav. Yeah? Okay. So it starts like this. Right? Page 1. Everybody has it. In English it's page 1. Also in Hebrew, it's also going to be Amud Aleph as well. Okay? We're going to start. In this Siman, we're going to learn the halachot that pertain to separating dairy from meat at a table. And by the end, we're going to be able to answer practical questions such as, right, what should you do if you're eating a cheese sandwich at your company's cafeteria table while your coworkers are eating a deli sandwich, which obviously means a meat sandwich, right? So what are you going to do? Now, again, here we're talking about two coworkers, but they're sitting down at the same table. So now what are you going to have to do in order to separate from the meat and the milk? Or what happens if your coworker is not Jewish and then he's eating ham? So therefore, before we were talking about basar v'chalav, is non-kosher meat any worse or any better? What would you say?
Same thing.
Same thing. Well, the truth is you have both svarot, right? Why do you have both svarot? What do we say already? We said that to do with meat and milk, the chidush of the meat and milk is that both of them were heter, and then they become asur. So because of that, it's a surbana. Are you allowed to have hana of pig?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course you are.
If I want to sell, you can sell pig.
You're not allowed to sell pig because that's Shulchan Aruch Siman Kuf Yud Chet. You're not allowed to sell. You meaning I'm not allowed to come and have a business of selling non-kosher. The only reason is because maybe I'm going to come and do business and I'm going to actually eat from it, partake from it. But for example, let's say Chas Shalom something became or somebody gave me a present of pig. It's not a subana. I could come and I could give it to my goy. I could give it to whatever it is. I'm allowed. There's a mutar, but not according to wine or basar v'chalav. A surbana, I'm not allowed to benefit. I cannot give it to the cleaner. That's benefiting. Talui. We learned in Siman Pei Zayin that's only if both of them had to be what?
Kosher animal.
Kosher animal and kosher milk, meaning they both have to be kosher. Not doesn't have to be nivelat trifa, meaning kosher that it comes from a cow. If it's going to be horse's meat, right, which did happen if you guys remember in Carrefour. Right, I told you that happened over there that they were selling horse's meat instead of cow's meat. Right, so then it's not basar v'chalav. So if it's not basar v'chalav, you're allowed to. Or for example, we spoke about that. What happens if it's going to be in Burger King? Let's say, for example, they don't actually cook it together. They have the hamburger on the grill, and then after it's already on the grill, they come, they put in the bread, they take the slice of cheese, boom. It's not doraita, it's not bishul, it's not doraita. If it's not doraita, mutar bana, you can sell it. Yeah, so again, these are all different halachot that we were speaking about. Now we're trying to go back into it because there's a svara to be more mekel and a svara to be more machmir. Svara to be more machmir to do with basar v'chalav is because obviously, right, it's a subana. Non-kosher is not. But is there going to be a difference or not? That's what we're going to have to speak about. What if you're flying with your wife and you want to eat together? Now, are you allowed to eat a meat sandwich while she's eating a cheese sandwich and she's right beside you? Right. Again, here it might be a little bit easier because you each have your own tray, right? Your own, on the plane, right? But are you allowed to? Right. Again, we're going to start from the earliest sources of the Gemara, work our way down to modern day poskim. And in this section, we're going to focus on the prohibition of eating meat and cheese at the same table. And in the next section, we're going to focus on situations where it is permitted, which is going to be called a heker. So if you guys remember, we already learned all the halachot of heker in hilchot nida chazak uruch. If you remember, we already spoke about all these halachot. Heker, when a woman is going to be exactly. So therefore, when a woman's a nida, so there's a lot of all of those halachot of hilchot nida they learn from here. Yes and no. Yes, you're right. We're going to speak about it here as well. Yeah, that's what we're going to speak about with the goy. But to do nida, we learned the basics of the halachot came from here. Okay, so we already learned this, but again, we're going to have to do a very nice chazara on the halachot of heker. What is considered, right, something recognizable which will cause me to stop and say one more time. Now if you realize, right, Jews, or better yet said, all human beings, but especially Jews, were very into much food. So therefore, since they were very much into food, that's why we had to make a lot of different types of halachot regarding about food. Hilchot nida, right, is kiruv. What is kiruv? You're too close to each other, and you have to form boundaries. Usually, husband and wife, they're very, very close. You have to form a type of a boundary in order that they don't transgress an avirah. So therefore, you keep them separate, right? The entire concept of food was to do with also that they had to make a gezerot, whether it's going to be because of bishul goy or all those things, because of benot tehen. What does it mean benot tehen? We know that since there was, if you were going to come and you're going to have a business deal, and the normal concept of business deal is when you come and you have food, it's mekarevet levavot, it comes and it brings people together. So therefore, if it's going to, and you want to break the ice, and it's very tense, you come, you have a drink, you have this, all of a sudden, so what happens? It could be that all of a sudden you're going to pass certain boundaries. So again, there's going to be a lot of halachot that we have to make sure that we're not going to pass certain boundaries, whether it's going to, that was the entire concept. By the way, you should know, after basar v'chalav, right, what comes? You've got melicha, basar v'chalav, tarovot, and then you're going to have all the halachot, whether it's going to be chalav Yisrael, bishul goy, pat goy, all those halachot come straight afterwards in the Yerodea. And then the further ones was what you spoke about, are you allowed to do schora, which means are you allowed to do business with non-kosher products? But again, we spoke about the non-kosher turkey. So turkey, you're allowed to have benefit from it. It's non-kosher, but it's not the basar v'chalav. So right now, somebody's going to ask me, Rabbi, I want to get non-kosher turkey because it's much cheaper for my employees. Am I allowed to? The answer is for sure yes. But what would I advise you? I would advise you that you would do an Uber's Eat or whatever you want to call it exactly, some type of a delivery directly from them to the goy, and not that you're the one that's dealing with it. Why? Because you don't want to get into dealing with non-kosher. But mitzad halacha, there's no problem. Again, you're not doing business with it. I'm just buying it for my employee to get him his turkey or whatever it is. That's it.
We're not allowed to buy food for them.
No, so that was because if they have basar v'chalav or they have wine. Because if you have a company card and you're going to come and you're going to pay for them the meal and they just did basar v'chalav, now you have a problem. That's what we spoke about. Or if they're going to get wine. Because no, not only לא לגרום להם עבירה. אתה משלם ואתה נהנה מזה. You're benefiting. You're not allowed to benefit. So I told them what you could do is you give them the money and they do it. That's number one. You give them the money, they do it. Or they come with a receipt. And then you come and I'm paying your meal. But you paid for it. It's yours. I just to do a reimbursement. It has nothing to do with me what you bought. You want to buy, you want to be vegetarian? Be vegetarian. You want to that's nothing to do with me, but I'm not benefiting. But if I'm going to come and I'm going to pay for your meat and milk meal, or I'm going to pay for your wine, that's when it becomes a problem.
If you paid already and you reimburse,
reimburse is probably no. I don't think so. Because you just tell them that I'm paying right now for your meal. Your meal, I don't care what you're doing, but I'm not benefiting. My benefit is I have to pay you your meal. Now, but if I'm paying directly your basar, that's something that's already, this is already one step removed. You understand? And the best is just to give it like a card, the truth is. But okay.
This is only on food or also on goyish product, for example, jewelry.
What does that mean? I don't understand. One more time?
Dealing with and trading only on food product, also
here we're only talking about food, basar v'chalav and everything.
Generally speaking, also on goyish items like jewelry, like cross and whatever.
No, cross we brought down. Well, we did speak about the cross, but we spoke about the cross.
All different types.
No, we spoke about the cross in the halachot of this also as well. There's a Igrot Moshe and also the Rav Ovadia. Rav Ovadia and Igrot Moshe, they both hold that the cross is not avodah zarah itself. It's a symbol for it, but it's not avodah zarah itself. And therefore you could have it. And therefore, if you go to many Jewish stores, right, the Swatch and all those, you actually come and you'll see it has a cross and they're selling crosses. And mitzad halacha, it's not a sur. It's not the best, obviously, but technically mitzad halacha, it's not a sur. Because you're not selling avodah zarah. It's a symbol. It's not an actual avodah zarah. That's what's brought down in the Igrot Moshe and Yabi Omer. But we spoke about it what to do with something. I don't know what it had to do connection with some of the halachot, but we spoke about it then. Okay, fine.
And in Marseille, we don't want to do a cross like this.
Fine, 100%, because archek mina kiur mina domelo, which means you always want to distance yourself from everything. Which is there was a rabbi that he went and he put out a calendar, right? And it was a calendar of all the Spanish, how do you call it, Bete Knesiot. Now, the problem is, I've been to Spain, right? And I actually went through all they all became museums. What did they become in the end? Churches. So therefore, all of them became churches. All the synagogues became churches. There was a church that they went, and there's a special church that you go inside, right? And it's a church. But then when they were breaking walls for doing renovations, it was a synagogue behind. Meaning behind the walls, it was a synagogue. And you actually see the parts of the synagogue, right? With psukim and with everything. I was in there. I had pictures and everything. Something incredible. So now the thing is, though, that if I'm going to come and I'm going to hang it up in my house, right? I don't want to hang up a thing and all I see is zatas and all these, crosses. You understand? I don't want that 100%. But again, if I'm a businessman and now I want to sell and I know this is a good seller, can I sell it? Mitzad halacha? Yes. Okay. Again, there's always going to be, remember, in always you have to know what's halacha and then what's the chumrah. The chumrah, you're right. I don't want nothing to do with it. You understand? Nothing that, but mitzad halacha, they say it's going to be permitted. Okay. Fine. Mishnah and Chulin. We're going to start on page 1. So everyone has the booklets over here, right? This is the booklet, the Mareh Mekomot. Okay. So in Mareh Mekomot, we're going to start the Mishnah in Chulin. So it says over there in number 1. Yeah, this is page 10. This. Yeah, it says over here like this. Yeah, יש לך את זה? אין לך את זה, זה 10. עמוד 10 שם. לא, אבל עמוד 10, עמוד 10, זה גם, אתה בסימן פ"ז, אני בסימן פ"ח. יש לי עוד אחד. 10, yeah? Okay, there you go. כל הבשר אסור לבשל בחלב חוץ מבשר דגים וחגבים. All of the meats, right? Any types of meats, you're not allowed to cook with milk, except for basar dagim, it's called basar dagim, and chagavim, grasshoppers. If you remember, we already spoke about chocolate-covered grasshoppers, right? Yeah, it's kosher. Yeah, in Morocco, it was a delicacy. Yeah, 100%. So he says over here, ve'asur le'alot im hagvina lashulchan. But you're not allowed to put it on the same table. Right, that's what it says here. Ve'asur le'alot im hagvina lashulchan, chutz mi basar dagim v'chagavim, except for basar dagim v'chagavim. So let's see the Rashi. Ve'asur le'alot, dilma ati lemichlinu ki adade. Maybe you're going to come to eat them together because whether it's going to be that they're touching each other and it's going to absorb from each other, and then you have a problem. So therefore, here you see this is a Mishnah mefureshet. The Mishnah is telling you you're not allowed to have meat and milk on the same table. Correct? Clear. Very good. Okay, so now we're going to see the next one, which is going to be the Mishnah in Chulin. Another one, ha'of olei magvina ala shulchan. So this is going to be number 2. So chicken you can put with gvina ala shulchan. Why would you make a difference between chicken and meat? And therefore what?
Just in case you think.
Because you remember we learned Yosef actually permits you completely. So here the off has a special din. So here the off says ole magvina ala shulchan. Ve'eno nechal, but it cannot be eaten. That is the words of Bet Shammai. But Bet Hillel says selam shos. What does that mean? Lo ole ve'lo nechal. No. Chicken and meat is the same thing. You cannot put it on the same. Sorry, chicken and cheese. Sorry. Yeah, I'll attack. Okay, everyone wants to serve themselves? Fine. Fine, so basically like this. We're continuing like this. The Mishnah in Chulin comes and it says, the off is olem gvina ala shulchan, but it's not going to be eaten. These are the words of Bet Shammai. Bet Hillel says, lo ole velo nechal, which means it does not go on the table and you're not allowed to eat it, so you cannot do anything. Be'ez shulchan amru, which shulchan are we talking about? So it says over here, b'shulchan she'ochel alav, ava b'shulchan she'sudar alav atavshil, noten ze b'tzad ze ve'eno choshesh. So here we find something incredible, right? We were just in number 2. What we just saw is something very, very interesting. That basically what we're trying to say is that there's going to be a concept, a difference between what type of a table. Are we talking about a counter? Or are we talking about a table? Why? You eat at the table. You don't eat at the counter. So therefore, even though you're going to have meat and milk, for example, on the shulchan shesudar alav tarshil, which is basically a countertop nowadays, right? A buffet station, whatever you want to call it exactly. So therefore, you're allowed to have them there. Why? You don't eat from there. However, though, if it's going to be on the table, you're not allowed to have them on the table. Because on the table, you eat. And therefore, I'm going to suspect that you're going to come and you're going to do these things. Okay? Let's go back to the English. Right? Okay, so one more time. The Mishnah in Chulin teaches that when someone is eating dairy, he may not place the meat next to him on the same table. Rashi explains that Chazal were worried that you might come to eat them together after they touch and absorb flavor from one another. Now you realize why Rashi had to bring that down. When you paid attention to Rashi, Rashi says, Dilma ati lemichlinu ki adade. You're going to eat them together. That they touched each other. Why did Rashi have to bring this down? So he wanted to make it much more of a doraita. But if he's going to try to make it only into that, okay, fine, you ate them, but it's a drabbanan on the drabbanan. You know, like first of all, it's not even basar v'chalav, right? Because technically speaking, it was never cooked together, right? And remember, in order to make it basar v'chalav doraita, you have to cook them. Derech bishul asrat Torah. How do you know derech bishul asrat Torah?
Do you what?
How do you know that a derech bishul asrat Torah? How do you know?
לא תבשל.
Chazak u'ruv. Lo tevashel. How many times was it written lo tevashel?
3 times.
3 times. So since it's written 3 times, one of them is isur bishul, isur achila, and isur hana'ah. but it's derech bishul. So the fact that it used the terminology of bishul, so therefore you know that it's only derech bishul. And if it's not going to be derech bishul, it's not going to be. So obviously Rashi didn't want to just say, listen, you just came and you ate meat and then you ate milk. No, they were touching. They were all, again, does it make it doraita, not doraita? You know, we're getting into things, but at least he wanted to make it much closer to not just stam that you just took meat and milk and you ate it. Okay? Now he comes and he says like this. The Badei HaShulchan explains that according to Rashi, the prohibition of Chazal applies even when both the meat and dairy are cold, out of concern that you have some residue that may rub off one another. Okay? Even though, again, there's going to be different explanations. Why does Rashi actually say this? But fine. Similarly, the Tur also writes that the prohibition of having meat and dairy on the same table is that you come to eat them together. So it's also the Tur. Okay? Which we're going to see the Tur also soon. I don't know why it says Tur number 1. It doesn't make sense, number 1, but fine. Okay, Mishnah and Chulin that we just read was, according to the Bet Hillel, you're not even allowed to have chicken and cheese on the same table, right? But you are allowed to place them both on the same table on which you're preparing food. Okay, fine. Sif Aleph and Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so now we just did the Mishnayot and Chulin. Now we go to Shulchan Aruch. So Shulchan Aruch actually paskins like the above Mishnayot, you're not allowed to place chicken and cheese on the table which you're eating, but you are allowed to place even meat and cheese on the table or countertop which you prepare food. Okay, which we explained already. Why? Right? Because you're not eating. As long as you're not eating and it's only preparations, so therefore there's no problem whatsoever. Okay? That was number 3. Okay, look here in the Darkei Tshuva, he says that although it's permitted to place meat and dairy on the same countertop, it's still recommended to have separate countertops in order that you don't have cross-contamination. But again, mitzad the strict halacha, there's no problem, right? You don't have a dairy countertop? Everyone has a dairy countertop. The only thing is usually the shaish, which is usually everybody has a dairy countertop and a meaty countertop. And then there's something which is in the middle, which is more of a parve type of an area, which is served for both. So therefore, in such a case, like, many times they have like the long marble. You have many times the house of the island or whatever it is, right? So that island usually serve for both, but usually in there, try to have table mats, place mats or whatever it is, that it's going to be, this is meaty, this is milky, but technically that's the same thing, because it's not really not meaty or not milky, it's something in the middle. But again, it's advisable to always have, okay?
Like to put pots on it or what?
Technically, even if you put a pot directly on a countertop, you don't make it milky.
Right.
Why? We're not going to learn it now. We're going to learn later on. No. The reason why is because no. Well, the reason why is because when you have a solid like a pot, right, and there's no liquid, right, between the pot and the countertop, the liquid is the conductor. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I have my stovetop. Is the stovetop meaty or milky? It's both. It's nothing. Why? Because the fire burns everything. So there's nothing there. But fine. Okay. I've got my stovetop. So I've got a meaty pot here and a milky pot here. Okay. Is that mutar or not? Mutar.
Steam.
Well, it's steam. They're both covered.
No, cool.
Both covered. Yeah. One here, one here. Right? What happens right now? What happens right now if I put them to touch? It's a Rama Mefureshet. What's halacha? I put them to touch. They touch without liquid in between them. They're dry pots. Dry pots. Inside you could have soup and I don't know what. Meat and milk. There's no isur. What do you mean no isur? It does not transfer from one to another without the liquid. The liquid is a conductor which makes them fuse and transfer over. If it's dry with dry, there's nothing there. So the same thing what happens with the countertop, right? When you come and you put the meaty pot on top of a countertop, it does not make it meaty.
Vapor doesn't count as a
vapor could count, but it depends if when the vapor gets there is a yatzoledable. Another important halacha you have to remember.
Sometimes like it's very hot and when you lift it up.
But that's not a vapor. That's not the vapor of I'm talking about the steam of the top, not of the bottom. Right? There's also another important halacha which is brought down in Yilchot Pesach. Rav Benzion Bashaul will always bring this down. Do you have to cover your Pesach countertop or not? So we know that we do it anyway. But technically speaking, you don't need to. Now, why don't you need to? Says Rav Benzion, it never became chametz. He says, why? We go after Rov Tashmisho. What is Rov Tashmisho? Rov Tashmisho means that the majority of the usage of a countertop is not with these hot pots or these hot things that are going to make it. So therefore, you don't have to worry about that thing. So many times in halakha, you are going to see many times that what does it actually make it meaty or not meaty? And a lot of times you don't have that. I was just listening to a shiur It's actually going to be connected to the shiur of Chinuch Hiladim tomorrow night, where there was a person in Lakewood.
Where is it?
It's in your house. Bruchim bayit. Yeah. So what happens is that there was somebody that came to one of the big rabbanim in Lakewood, and he said, "Rabbi, do I have a problem with my my sink? Right, the faucet, right? That it's probably milky. So do I have to be choshesh of that it's milky?" So the rabbi went and he told him as a joke. He said, "Listen, if you open it up and hot coffee comes out, right, with milk, so then you're right. Then it's milky." He says, "No, but do I have to be careful? Then maybe it's milky. Maybe it's." He says, "No. What does that mean? You know, people have to be normal. We have to know exactly what makes it be'emet meaty or not meaty. And again, there's halachot. So again, does there exist such halachot? Yes, but not always, which means that we have to pay attention what is considered halacha. Okay? Fine. So he says like this. We learned above. The biblical prohibition of eating dairy and meat is only if the meat and dairy were cooked together. But if they were not cooked together, eating them is only a rabbinic prohibition. This, however, raises the following question. If so, how can Chazal then forbid placing meat and dairy on the same table? Meat, again, because you're going to eat it together. That's a gzera l'gzera. Everyone understood what a gzera l'gzera is? One more time. Baba Haki.
Yeah.
If I'm going to right now come and I have meat and milk on this table, so you guys are right now having the pizza, and I'm going to bring you a steak right here. It's a sur. Why? Why is it a sur?
Table.
It's on the same table. And what am I going to do? I'm going to eat them together. Right? Now, the question is, so first of all, together, what does that mean? I don't know if I'm going to put the steak on top of the pizza. That's already, but even if it's going to be one after another, but kilu together. Well, 1 second. Why is that a sur? It was never cooked together. So what are you going to tell me? Cooked in your mouth? Yeah? Cooked in your mouth? No. Okay. Yeah? They speak about that. You know that. If a person has braces, they should 24 hours before Pesach not eat chametz. Right? So somebody once said you should do hagala on the braces. Open up your mouth, take the boiling hot water. Oh, yeah. You do hagala. Yeah?
Maybe.
Huh? Yeah? So basically the concept is it's a gzera l'gzera. So why is it tasur? It should be mutar. So he says like this. He says, right? Furthermore, this prohibition applies even to placing chicken and dairy on the same table, which is again rabbinically. So again, you've got like another derabanan over here. So what's going on? So he says like this. That's a prohibition of placing, right? Page 2. Chicken and dairy on the same table seems to involve the 3 rabbinic decrees. It's a gzera, ligzera, right? Because again, the chicken to the meat, right? That you're going to eat it together, right? And if they're eating it together, because you're going to cook it together. But that's already 3. What's going on? Right? Yeah, it has it there. Rabbinically, the chicken on the same table as cheese. Lest you come to eat them, which is again rabbinically. And even if you do, it has to be cooked together, which is again everything. So how do they make such a gezerah l'gzerah? You're having 3 gezerot. How do you do such a thing? Right? Does it make sense? So he says like this, the Taz. The Taz is good. The Taz and the Shach, they're going to answer different answers, and they're going to say like this. The Taz answers that, in fact, the Gemara concludes that in certain situations, just like ours, you're allowed to make a gezerah l'gzerah. Why? Because any time that it's easily that you can make a mistake, you're allowed to make a gezerah l'gzerah. Right? Now look in the footnote number 4. It says it's important to point out that some Acholim disagree with the answer of the Taz and understand the prohibition of placing meat and cheese on the same table, as due to because they may come and eat them together after they are cooked. And they also explain that is what Rashi meant above when he wrote that they're going to absorb from another. When Chazal forbade placing them on the table together, they also included chicken in the same gezerah. Okay, so again, this is the Mishpitzot Zahav and the Chokhmat Adam, in the meaning like this. Mishpitzot Zahav is the Pri Megadim. The Pri Megadim in Mishpitzot Zahav explains the Turei Zahav. Remember that the names, the Taz, what was the name of the Taz? Rabbi David Halevi. Yeah, Rabbi David Halevi, he was Ashkenazi. Remember that the Shulchan Aruch was Faradi, but the commentators were usually Ashkenazi. So you have the Taz and the Shach. The Shach is the Siftei Kohen, right? Or Shabtai Kohen. And the Taz,
take advantage of a
yeah, so he says the Taz, right, is a Turei Zahav. So the Pri Megadim, when he wrote his Sefer, the Pri Megadim wrote what's called the Mishpetzot Zahav on the Turei Zahav. You understood? Zahav.
Yeah.
So he always did that. And whenever he was writing a sefer, so that Mishpetzot Zahav was explaining the Taz. So he comes and he explains the Taz by coming and explaining, and he's saying that really be'emet, it's not 100%, it's just stam that you're going to have them on the same table, but rather that you're going to eat them after they were cooked. So it's not so many decrees further on, it's much less, because after they're cooked, now you're going to eat them together, because they're already cooked. Okay? Fine. Now he comes and he says that this was the answer of the Taz. Now we're going to get to the answer of the Shach. Okay, so the Shach, which is actually very beautiful because you have Kohen Levi in Israel. Right? The Shach was a Kohen, the Taz was a Levi, and the Maran and the Ramah were both Israeli. Yeah, so you have everybody there on the page. Okay, so the Shach comes, and he explains as follows. Right? The Shach says, right, like this. The reason why Chazal come and they forbid placing meat and dairy on the same table is only because each of them is permitted independently, and we are concerned that you might absentmindedly grab the other food. Right? However, though, right, he says, and that's why they did enact the Gzera L'Gzera. However, though, you would be allowed, right, to come and to eat cheese sandwich at a table where non-Jew is eating non-kosher meat, because the meat is already forbidden on itself, and therefore there's no problem. So you remember at the beginning of the shiur, this is what I told you guys, is there more of a svara, right, a logic to say that it's going to be better that the non-kosher food there than the kosher food? And here you just found that svara. The reason why is like this. The non-kosher food is always asur. So since it's always asur, so therefore in such a case where it's always going to be prohibited, we saw this also by where? By Maritayin. You remember we already saw this by Maritayin. Is there a Maritayin if there's something that's going to be asur? Because anyway it was already asur. So you're not going to suspect that you're going to do an asur. So we already learned this in the last shiur on Pei Zayin as well. However, though, here what we're trying to say is as follows. You have right now the concept of what? You have the concept of Gzera L'Gzera. What is a Gzera L'Gzera? It doesn't make sense. You're making so many decrees. The original, when I go back to the copy, which is the carbon copy that comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's only doraita. What is only doraita? Meat and milk cooked together. The second it's not cooked together, it goes down to a derabanan. The second I want to put it on the same table, that's already more than derabanan. The chicken was bichlal out of the ballpark. That was somewhere. That's where are you going? What he's answering is like this. He says like this. He says they made such a gzera l'gzera because it didn't make sense. Both of them are kosher food. It's not meaning I could eat this and then I could eat the steak. They're both kosher, so nothing's stopping me from coming and eating them together. He says, but when I have a partner, or I've got an associate, right, or a guy that's a colleague that he's non-Jewish and he's got his cheeseburger over there or non-kosher food right in front of me, I'm already going to stay distant because that's not kosher. I'm not going to touch there. So they didn't need to make this type of a Gzera L'Gzera. The Gzera L'Gzera was only because both of them are heter, and there's a chidush that even though both on their own is heter, now they come together, it becomes an isur. And that's actually the chidush, by the way, the chidush of the Chichat Torah, that even though you have two elements which are 100% kosher, when you mix them together, they become not kosher. Where do you learn that? Where else do you see that in the Torah?
I don't know about kosher or not, but I know about same concept with people that you eat if you know them or not. If you don't know them, you don't.
No, 100%. That's
So,
because
the same thing.
no.
Proximity.
That's no, but why?
Proximity of knowing each other.
And therefore,
So if you do know each other, then you might dip.
no,
You don't-
100%,
you don't.
100%.
So same
Because if I don't know you, I'm not going to do that.
Correct.
100%.
So same principle.
No, but
If
yeah, okay, that's that. Yes, to do makiro, we're going to speak about that. It only applies to makiro, but if not, then I would never even dare come and start taking your food, right? But what do we see this? Kilaim, shatnez, right? All these things. We always see the same thing. You have two things which intrinsically on their own, they're 100% mutar. You put them together and it becomes, so any type of kilaim or shatnez, whether it's in clothing, whether it's in fruits or trees, right, grafting, or behemoth or animals, right, and all those things, or even in clothing, which is going to be so all these aspects, right?
two guys cannot meet together.
Fine, that's well, that comes out of it, nothing, right? Fine, but you're talking about the end product, right? Which means that each one on their own, right, is going to be something which is pure, which is kosher, and then putting them together, you're going to have a problem. Fine. Now he comes and he says as follows. He says, the Shach then questions his psak based on a Rashba. The Rashba in Yichot Pesach says you're not allowed to sit down at a table as someone eating chametz, even though the chametz is inherently forbidden. Right? There you have a question then. You have chametz. Chametz is asur. What are you going to answer? Even before looking at the answer, it's a very simple answer. What are you going to tell me? One more time. One more, what?
כמו שאני לא אוכל את זה, אני לא אוכל חמץ, כי הבשר לא כשר, גם אני לא אוכל
But the Shach is going to disprove that in 1 second. But why? Give me a logic.
No, because I'm not going to, like before, I'm not going to meet, no, he permitted me to be there because it's
I
not
want you
kosher,
to
so
tell
I'm
me
not
the
going to
opposite of what I just said. Very good. A guy's eating bread 350, I don't know how many days a year. Comes 8 days of Pesach or 7 days in Israel, and now the guy's going to forget. So that for sure. It's not the non-kosher is 365 days a year prohibited, right? This is not prohibited. A person is not bodel et atzmo me'chametz. He never separates himself from bread. Why do you think that there's such a concept that even after doing bedikat chametz or bitul chametz, you still do bedikat chametz? Why? Just in case you're going to find it. Well, what are you going to find it? No, because since you're always with bread, you're just going to pop it in your mouth. So even though I just did bitul and I annulled it, so midoraita, I'm already okay. Doesn't matter. Why? You're going to do it right now. Right? So the same concept. So he says it. He says like this. He says, the Shach answers that concerning chametz, we are extra stringent because of the severity of the prohibition, as it is evident that it's going to be chayav karet, and even if a small crumb is mixed in, it's not batel. But regarding, so that's his answer. So he says, but regarding non-kosher food, right, eating the same table is permitted since you will be careful not to take from the non-kosher food. Okay? He says that, again, and not be placed on the table to do with the bread, right? But again, what's he trying to say? You look at the severity. The Shach wanted to give you another answer. He says that there's another answer. What's the severity of it? According to the severity, that's how you know how much I have to distance myself from it. So what is the severity? Right? He comes and he says, right, as follows. He says, yeah, he comes and he says like this. He says, yeah. He comes and he says like this. He says, where do you have it? Chiyuv karet. That you don't have it anywhere else. If a person eats meat and milk, what do they get?
Meal.
Huh?
A meal.
A meal, that's for sure a meal. But what do they get? Lashes. That's it. Yeah, they get lashes. That's it. They don't get anything else. It's lashes. Here, it's mamash karet. So obviously, it's a much higher level. So therefore, because of that, according to the karet, you have to distance yourself, right? You have to distance yourself much more. Okay? Fine. Summarize. Yeah, we're going to do a summary of what we learned until now. You are not allowed to eat meat on the same table as dairy, unless you're going to come to eat both of them together. So that's what we just said until now, correct? No meat and milk on the same table. You're allowed to eat at the table where non-Jew is eating non-kosher food, since you would never grab something that's inherently forbidden. Because again, you would never grab it, so you're allowed to eat with him, even though he's eating.
More optimistic. Look at this.
Yes, French fries.
No, but think about it.
Usually you can take French fries.
No, but
okay,
just think about it. The rabbi says, no problem, you can be there. Why? Because for sure you're not going to eat touch not kosher food.
100%.
How optimistic or how good we
Not
were
optimistic.
back then.
It's ingrained in your
so
brain. Do you know what? I'm going to do a test. Right? People have small children here.
I mean, it's amazing.
Small children. Yeah, small children. Listen carefully. Your small child is in the store and he's asking you, I want the candy. Right? I want a candy. No, not now. No, but I really want the candy. Or I want the chocolate bar. No, you can't. It's not healthy. It's not this. He could drive you crazy. You're going to say yes. You say it's not kosher, he stops.
You know the goyim use it?
No, Ribono Shalom.
You know the goyim use it?
Not kosher.
The cashier. Go use it.
The what?
It's not kosher.
Yeah, they say it's not kosher?
It's kosher.
It is kosher. They stop. You understand? Why? It's grilled in the brain. It's in the brain. The second that you say that, that's it. Yeah, it's something incredible. Yeah, fine. You're also right. That's why I told you guys also to do with how a person is brought up. That's why I told you in the I don't remember which yeshiva it was, right, when they were stealing the milk from the fridge. What do you write down on the milk? It's not Chalav Yisrael. Once you write down it's not Chalav Yisrael, nobody's gonna Lignov mutar, but Chalav Yisrael you're not allowed to. No, you're not allowed to.
It has something to do with how the parents say to the kids.
100%. You're right,
Because
and that's what we're going to talk about.
In their mind, it's like,
you're right.
No,
But you should know, Blina, that on tomorrow night, that's going to be the shiur on authority and giving orders, that it becomes engrilled in their brains that they have what's called boundaries, and that boundaries brings yirat shamayim. That boundaries, and it's a lot of things that all has to do with it. Okay, fine. I'll give you a teaser. Fine, let's go. The last one. Right, you're also not allowed to eat the same table as someone eating chametz on Pesach due to the severity of the prohibition. Okay, fine. Practical applications. What about a family trip? Happens all the time. Right, you're going to have a family trip. I want sandwiches made out of tuna. Right, Baba Haki wants out of cheese. Right, because he comes from Morocco, so they only had cheese. Right, the doctor. Right, his grandfather was salamis from
From Morocco.
Right, yeah. So each one. Now, what are you doing? You're going to all eat together. What are you going to be doing now? So you have a problem. So what are you going to do? If you're having a picnic with your family at a park table and a non-Jewish family joins you at the same table. So now if they're going to be eating non-kosher food, you could continue eating at the table. However, though, if it's Pesach and they're eating chametz, so now you're not allowed to eat at the table Again, because of the crumbs of the food and everything else. Okay, fine. Okay, in the footnote, he just says that you're not allowed even if there's a heket. Meaning in that situation, even if there's going to be a heket, you're not allowed to. That's a chidush of the Shulchan Aruch. Even if there's a heket.
It's obvious. If you don't have a care.
No, if you don't have a heket, for sure it's a sur.
Okay.
But even if you have an heket, it's still a sur. That's a chidush. Even if you have an heket, it's still a sur. Okay? What about being fleshig at a dairy meal? Fleshig means meaty. Are you allowed to be meaty, right? So, like, for example, are you allowed to join a dairy meal if you ate meat half an hour? Interesting question. Yeah, so for example, you had supper right before you came here. Yeah, you come, you have supper, and now you come, and how many times does it happen? I think you did it last week, no? I'm meaty. Yeah, he probably purposely said that so he doesn't have to eat, right? But whatever, he comes and he says he's meaty. So now, is he even allowed to be here? He's meaty, he's at a milky meal. He just ate half an hour ago. Yeah? So it says over here like this. So there's going to be a Bet Yaakov. The Badei Shulchan is going to quote the Bet Yaakov. Look over here, number 3. Vayem b'pri megadim. Yeah, everybody has it. Look in the Pri Megadim. Temaiti b'tshuva Bet Yaakov, that he's going to bring a tshuva of a Bet Yaakov, the response, right? The Bet Yaakov. Temishu b'toch 6 sha'ot shel achila basar. If you're within 6 hours of eating meat, lo yeshev etzel mi she'ochel gvina. You should not eat. You should not sit at a table. You should not sit down with them that they're going to be eating cheese. Shem yoshit lo v'yishkach v'yochlenu. Maybe he's going to pass it to him. He's going to forget, and he's going to eat very easily. But the Pri Megadim comes and he says, no, it's incorrect. Why? He permitted it. For 2 different reasons. Ayin Sham, look over there. Now, what's the second reason? The fact that as long as he's not eating it together, it's not that chamur. But that's already too far away. Meaning the gzera was not extended to eating one after another, only if it's one with each other. Here, it would only be one after another. Because again, remember, there's no more meat anymore. The meat was in my house, and I already ate it half an hour ago. Now there's only cheese. So for me to eat the cheese now, that already, the gzera, that's already too far. That I don't go. I'm not going to extend it too far. So that's what he says. Right? He says, וכן זה כתב גם כמספר כנפי יונה, ונראה לפי זה הוא הדין נמי דשר לעלות גבינה לשולחן שאוכל עליו שאר מאכלים, אף שלא המתין עדיין נדבב שעה ומאכילה בשר. So it comes out that you're allowed to put then a cheese on a table that they have other foods, even though they didn't wait 6 hours for מאכילה בשר, the same thing. Because again, that means we never made such a decree. So the fact of putting it on the table, right, we didn't make such a, I mean, you could sit it down on the table, just don't eat. But we never made a decree. We never made a gzera. So you're allowed to come without any problem and sit down at that meal. So you're going to be sitting down here, even though you ate meat half an hour ago. Okay?
An old person who has memory disorder, he forgot.
Okay, fine.
No, is it?
I'm sure there is more case of people like doing a vera in this case than in other cases.
100%. But remember, even if it was going to be done the avera, what is avera?
No,
The Rabbanan.
Yeah.
We gave a shiur on this, if you remember. If a person does an avera de Rabbanan, do they need kapara or not?
Yes, because
There's a machloket. The reason why there's a machloket is because the entire reason why, if you did b'shogeg on a doraita, right? No, but this is b'shogeg on a Rabbanan. This is a shogeg on a Rabbanan. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So then that's a machloket. That's what he said. Why is it a machloket? Because at the end of the day, right, according to some of the shitot, you had no intention of doing, but even if you did, it was on a Rabbanan. So it wasn't on doraita. So the question is it actually going to be pogem or not? So bli other we could give that shiur again. It's a big machloket. It's actually beautiful.
If the guy the dimension.
If the guy is elderly anyway, he's considered a chole. If he's already a chole anyway, you could give it to them together as well.
Right, we said there in a seudah.
Yes.
Is it limited to seudah? But then we also said maybe now we said cheese on its own, so which means here we're referring to seudah.
No, but even without the seudah, seudah is a bigger chidush. That even if it's seudah, you're still allowed to sit down with it.
Right.
Meaning, even if it's seudah, not only just cheese on its own, or just milk, or just anything, right? Anything you're allowed, mamash, at a full-fledged meal. Imagine everything here is milky. No, this is a seudah. There's a full-fledged seudah.
This is seudah.
This is not a seudah. You got here. They could be cut Amazon. They could do everything here with all the pizza that they eat and everything. It's not a Suda.
I mean, all machloket if you make mizan aram motzi.
Right, okay, you're right. You're right.
Otherwise you
But
eat
but for
bread.
sure, no, but Suda does not mean only bread. I'm gonna ask you a question. How many people
So-
eat bread during the week? A
Right.
lot of people don't.
Right.
So you're gonna say that you've never had a Suda in your life.
Well,
You only have Suda from Shabbat to Shabbat.
Right, that's why Rabbi Naim says you have to eat your salad in the sukkah because that's your seudah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. You understand? I mean, that nowadays this is a Suda. You understand? Now you're right. There's other halachot which are Suda, which obligate, for example, a sukkah, which obligate whether it's going to be kviyut Suda. So you're right. On certain halachot, pizza, but for example, on pizza, we did mention that even though the video says that pizza is mizonot, if you're going to be kovea Suda, right now, what is kovea Suda? So we already brought down that kovea Suda was going to be it used to be 216 grams, now it became 162 grams. But the Shita of the Gaon Mevila and also the Mishnah Berurah, how he paskins is, this is my Suda. If I only eat 2 slices, now you're going to come, you're going to say, Rabbi, that's a joke. You didn't even start. Right? There's a snack. There's not even you didn't even start. But if that's my Suda, let's say you have that every Sunday night, and that's my meal. I don't eat nothing else. According to the Gaon Mevila and Mishnah Berurah, Hamotzi, Bikatamazon, and everything. Why? That's my Suda. According to Sfaradim, you're not allowed to.
No, we're changing shiurim.
What?
We're changing the shiurim.
Yeah, well, it's not we're changing the shurim because they hold that when you're kovea Suda, that is your Suda. You don't need weight or volume. You just need that is a Suda. So that Suda is ofechet to become a Suda. And we did speak about it in Chok Viyut Suda. If you guys remember, we did speak about that there's an extra leniency by Shabbat. Meaning like this. Let's say you go to a Shabbaton, a bar mitzvah, and they have bread there. So let's hope that it's actually Yashan, because if not, then you have another problem. But okay, fine. But let's say it's Yashan, right? And all of a sudden you come, you taste it. It's egg. It's egg challah. So now you're going to say to yourself, huh? No, likvos Suda al mezonot. No, but not Suda Shabbat. You could be Kiddush Vinkom Suda, but not Suda Shabbat.
No.
Suda Shabbat has to be with bread.
You know, but weekdays, can you?
Well, weekdays you don't need to be a Kovea Suda.
No.
You don't need to do a Suda on the weekday.
No, my question is, you have bread that is mezonot.
Yes.
You want to kovea Suda on this?
You have to have a certain amount.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's
Okay, so you're going to have whatever it is.
So
162 grams. I don't know how much that will be. Maybe it's 2.
On Shabbat you can do it or no?
For sure you could do it on Shabbat, but there's a special leniency on Shabbat that since the Shabbat Suda is a Suda in itself, so maybe I don't need to have the 162 grams because it's already Suda Shabbat. So there's an extra leniency besides the Gaon and the Mishnah Berurah that is my Suda, right? You have an extra one, okay? But anyway, but there's what?
What's a kiddush?
Yeah, it's a beautiful chiddush. We learned it. We learned it in the last Simichat Chaver.
So one roll and
Again, one roll. The truth is, I would make you a sveka. You know why? First of all, I would use a Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham is quoted by the Mishnah Berurah, and that's how he paskins, that all the food combines with the bread. We don't paskin like that because the Rav Chida argues, the Ben Ishchai, the Kaf HaChaim, Rav Ovadia, or Letzion, everybody argues on the Magen Avraham. So that's why when you ask me, is this, I would come and I say, don't add the cheese, don't add the tomato sauce, don't add nothing, just the dough. I ask you, how much is the dough? That's it. That's a psak. How much is the dough? That's how we paskin. But I would use that with the kviyut Suda of the Mishnah Berurah and the Gaon Vilna. That's my meal. So if that's my meal, that's it. Plus Suda Shabbat. I've got 3 reasons. And with those 3 reasons, I could be mekel that I don't have to. That, for example, obviously lechatchila you should try to have the 162 grams. But let's say I couldn't, or whatever the reason is. Yeah, you would do because Amazon.
Wow.
If you're full, it's going to be the right.
So Rabbi,
It's always the Rabbanan if you're not full.
so Rabbi, for real now.
For real.
No, this is very good because Suda Shlishit, we all puffed up, you know, like I don't know what.
100%.
We cannot eat it.
You are not puffed up.
Okay, I'm puffed up on Suda Shlishit, and I'm doing it only L'Shem Shamayim. Really, I don't. I realize, and probably maybe. So, and then I ask you every Suda, Rabbi, is that enough? Is that enough? And you tell me, it doesn't. So, can I go with a little piece and I'm done?
For sure not.
Why not?
One more time. There are 2 halachot. You know what Tzvei Dinim is? 2 halachot. 2 halachot. What you're talking about, first of all, for Birkat Hamazon, how much do you have to eat? A kazait. That kazait is bread, according to everybody. There's nobody that's going to tell you, I'm going to have a half a kazait of bread and a half a kazait of chips or I don't know what, and I'm going to say Birkat Hamazon. Doesn't exist. First of all, you have to have a kazait to say Birkat Hamazon. That's halacha number 1. Number 2, did you do Netilat Yadayim with bracha?
Can.
Okay, so now you have to have a kabetza. Okay, so now step number 2, I just change it from kazait to kabetza. So every time that you come and you ask me, Rabbi, is it enough? I'm always telling you, according to Kazari Kabetza, what we're talking about now is being kovea sudan of mizonot bread, which you would need not 28 grams or 54 or 56 grams. You need 162 grams minimum, right? Again, even in that, there's machlokot, right? So 162 grams, that's already 3 times the amount that I just told you now. That's 3 kabetzim. That's 3 times. So I'm not going to tell you it's now 3/4 of a lachmaniya. And I'm going to tell you it's 1.5. You understand? Or 2. You understand? It depends. Obviously, you have to weight them. You know, and every lachmaniya is different. So that's 2 completely different halachot. What he's talking about, what you're talking about, 2 different halachot. So when you come and you ask me, Rabbi, is it enough? We're talking about bikat hamazon. And bikat hamazon, right? You need on a kazait or kabetza. If you didn't do it with a bracha, kabetza. If you did it without a bracha, kazait.
So מה השיטה הזאת, if you eat, the Ashkenaz does it also, my son told me from the yeshiva, he learned it. He also like me, he cannot eat. So he said, Rabbi, you know, you don't need to eat this. You can eat 2-3 crackers and you're done, and you're still done.
Shulchan Aruch brings down that if a person cannot eat bread, then b'diavad, it's not the lechatchila. It's not lechatchila. For sure, it's not lechatchila. Do you know that there's a famous?
Well, today.
So again, are you allowed to join a dairy meal? A dairy meal if you ate meat half an hour ago? Again, the Badei Shulchan quotes Bet Yaakov. He says that you're not allowed to, but the Pri Megadim argues. And he writes that eating dairy after eating meat is much lesser prohibition than eating meat and dairy together. Consequently, Chazal only enacted the Gezerah to prevent one from eating meat and cheese together, but not to avoid the lesser prohibition of eating dairy after meat. And the custom is to follow the Pri Megadim. So therefore, if the custom is to follow the Pri Megadim, even if one of you guys already ate meat, you come here, and that's it. You're just watching. What's the problem? Enjoy. You already ate meat. Doesn't matter. I'm allowed to sit down. I'm allowed to eat. Based on the Pri Megadim, the Badei Shulchan writes that if you're meaty, you're allowed to prepare dairy food, and we're not worried that you're going to come to eat it while you're preparing it. Right? Why? The same thing. I'm not going to make so many gezerot to gezerot. So therefore, just like I'm not going to make a gezerah, you're not allowed to sit down at the table where they're eating milk. I'm not going to make a gezerah, you're not allowed to prepare the dairy meal when you're meaty. Why? We don't make such a decree to a decree. Right? It's too far. You understand? I mean, that they didn't do such a thing. However, though, he quotes the Yad Ephraim, that he writes that if the type of the food is usually tasted and swallowed while preparing, so then it's better not to prepare it, right? Because many times, you know, if you're preparing it and then all of a sudden in the middle, you know, you're tasting, you know, Toamei Chaim Zachu, right? They just actually had the big Rosh Yeshiva, I think it was a Button, I don't remember who it was, right? About going against the concept of Toamei, right? This is one of the big Rosh Yeshivot. He was going against that on Erev Shabbat. A lot of people come and they start drinking, right? No, but the Toamei is not just tasting the food. They come and they start drinking Erev Shabbat. Oh, what? No, Erev Shabbat, the Friday afternoon. They come, they take a violin, they start playing with violins, right? And they start dancing around. Erev Shabbat, not on night time. Erev. Toamei, they call it Toamei. Kabbalat Shabbat is at the time of Shabbat. Kabbalat Shabbat is not before Plag HaMincha. You can't accept Shabbat before Plag HaMincha. Bain. So they call it Bain.
Ben Hashmashot.
Ben Hashmashot, fine. So that they call it Toamei. So they were speaking against the entire concept of Toamei, that it's destroying the children of the generation. Because what happens is the people come, they start getting drunk because they want to forget their sorrows, right? And therefore, in order to do that, they want to forget all the problems. So they start drinking, and then they come home, they're half smashed. The children are seeing the parents like that. And then when the child wants to do it, he says, what, if my daddy could do it, why can't I do it? And then they continue going, and it's just destroying Mamash. He wrote down Hashem Yishmor, what's going on, right? But by the way, you should know, it's a custom in England. I met Balei Batim, regular Balei Batim. Well, Surfside, I know for sure they do it, but Balei Batim, right, in England, it's a very big minhag that on Friday night they could get completely drunk. Completely drunk.
No.
Completely. And the wives are just like, you know, what are they going to do? It's cannot. You know, they're, but whatever.
There was a time, many years, I was...
Don't put me inside your... I don't even remember what you
We used to get together at my house. Before everybody gets ready, around 3 or 4 o'clock, and we used to have chafle.
And it was with the drinking.
With
little bit.
Yeah, we know it a little bit.
You know.
You're a little bit, exactly.
It was one finger like this. And when we come back from Tfilah, you didn't have the appetite.
That was probably one of the least of the problems. Because remember, once you have Revi'it,
not drunk. I mean,
okay, but once you have a Revi'it, it's a problem of Minchai. That's another problem. A lot of people don't realize that. Some people, they bring whiskey or they bring something to the Beit Knesset. They say, you know, Lilu Nishmat, Bechavod. That's right before Mincha. That's it. That's it. You know, you drink, now you have a problem with mincha. It's not lechatchila. You understand? Yeah, depends how much. Depends how much. Okay, fine. Next, dairy allergy. What happens if a person has dairy allergies? So it says like this: if one suffers from a dairy allergy, would he/she be allowed to eat meat at a table with cheese on it or not? Okay, why? 100%. Why? Because if they have a dairy, I think it's called lactose tolerance, no? Yeah. So basically, there's even pills for it and everything, right? So what happens if a person has that? So he could say, listen, would there be a problem or not? Right? Very good. So let's see number 4. Number 4 says, number 4 on page 10 on the bottom. בדבר השאלה אם צריך יקל לאדם שהוא אלרגי לחלב כאשר חלב על השולחן והוא אוכל בשר. Does he need a יקל? Right? So, 10, עשירי, למטה. Yeah? So he says, ודאי שצריך יקל. למה? שהרי לא סומכים על מה שאיננו רגיל או שמזיק לו דבר, אלא צריך יקל שלא ישכח ויטעה. Right? So again, this is like what Richard just said now. This concept of lo plug. What's the concept of lo plug? I'm going to start saying, no. For him, he doesn't need a heket. And I'm supposed to read his mind that he's got allergies or he doesn't have allergies. You always need a heket. You need a heket. That's it. Ve'osif da'af al pi de'venevela ken mekilim kevan de'badilin shmine mikom makom hacha kevan de'lozina batal yachid lachen yesh lachmir mashen ken nevela sheikh lechol olam. He wants to differentiate. He says like this. He says nevela is every Jew, meaning every Jew you're prohibited to come and you're not allowed to eat a nevela. Obviously, if you're going to have a cholesh yishbo sakana, there's always going to be the exception to the rule, but that's an individual. It's not on the klal, it's not on the whole. So he says here, it's on the whole. So since it's on the whole, if the other guy is eating non-kosher, you don't need a heket. But he says, but if the person himself has a technical issue, they're 100% allergic, they cannot stand it, I don't know what, doesn't matter. But that's an individual. For an individual, you still need a heket. We're not going to bend the rules for an individual, only when it's going to be for the public. Okay? In contrast, though, right? If you go back over here, if you go back in the English, in contrast, the Oziel Yaakov, look at page 5 on the top. 5 on the top. Ulam. נראה לענייתתי דלכאורה, that he comes and he says, לכאורה, יש לחלק בחזקות של האלרגיה שלו לחלב, right? ונדון שיש לו רק רגישות קצת, נראה שאסור. תפשר כשתאהב לאכול, את תלמך על מיניו שגלו לא צער. אבל מנידון שהוא בסכנה ממש כשאוכל, ויכול להיות שאומר, אין דבר בדיל יותר ממה שמסוכן אצלו, וזה מותר לאכול אפילו בלי היכר, וקל להבין. So basically, this Oziel Yaakov, he wanted to come and he wanted to say, באמת, it's different. Again, 2 different halachot. He wants to say, there's a lot of people that also they're diabetic. But you know what there is? There's the pills. So what do? It's sakana. Mamash sakana for them to come and to start. But they'll, then okay, they pop a pill with gamarno and that's it. Right? But he says, but then there's some people which mamash it's sakana. It's they need EpiPens, these things. So therefore he comes and he says, in such a concept, he says for sure that, he says it over here. He says that what's a severe allergic reaction, one who travels with an EpiPen. Right? So he says, such a case, you don't need a heker. That is the shita of the Oziel Yaakov. So again, you're going to have a machloke between the Avnei Yashve and the Oziel Yaakov. Even the Oziel Yaakov, again, did not permit blanket statement. He just said, if it's mamash, ad kedekach, that you would need an EpiPen, so that for sure is sakanat nefashot, you would never eat it, so therefore there you don't need a heket. Right? Now again, it's a very questionable, why don't you have a problem with maritain? And what are you going to answer? Why is no problem with maritain?
We don't invent maritain.
Exactly, because it's only the Rabbanan. So if you remember on the maritain, on this the Rabbanan, we're not going to come and start being so mahmid, right? And start saying that he has to have it. You understand? So therefore...
But why? I didn't understand.
On what? On
No, lama lo.
Lama lo?
Yeah.
No, because again, maritain is usually going to be, there was a machloket that we learned in the last shiurim, and the end of Peizayin, is maritain only under Raita, also the Rabbanans. We did hold that there is going to be under Rabbanans, but certain times we were going to be mekel. So for certain times, for example, we spoke about going into McDonald's, having non-kosher restaurant meetings, right, and all those things. So it all goes back to that.
And they think
So you can?
What?
We can
So the majority of those cases, it was permitted. Yes.
So we are not allowed to go.
So if you're going nowadays, you're allowed to go to McDonald's to buy a drink or to go to the washroom. Huh? Because the majority of the people know that you're going in for a drink and they're not going to suspect that you're sitting down to eat a hamburger there.
No.
That's what we spoke about. You remember I told you about Orlando, that they have in Orlando. I don't remember where it is. There's a McDonald's that has 3 floors of children's, how do you call this thing? Playground and whatever it is. So you're allowed to go in there to go to the playground. Yeah, that's a question. Fine. Fish and meat. Right? Rabbi Yochanan Vosner. So this is the Chaya Levi. So remember, right? Rav Vosner was a Levi. So you have the Chaya Levi. Yeah, you could join, by the way, on Zoom if anybody's leaving now. Yeah, you're on the Zoom of Daf Yomi. Okay? So he comes and he says this, בשו"ת ויען יוסף, שכתב גם לא מצינו לאסור לעלות דגים על השולחן שאוכל בשר, וכן להפך. What about fish, right, and meat, right? Fish and meat. Oh, okay, fine. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Right? So you got fish and meat. וכן להפך, הגם דסכנת חמינה מאיסור, יש שם אדרבה, כיוון דחמירה לאדם, אין לכו שיבוא לאוכלם יחד. So you're allowed to put fish and meat on the same table? So the answer is yes. Yeah? No, because if you're not allowed to eat them together, so just like fish and meat.
Fish and meat, yeah, okay.
Fish and meat. Yeah, so that's what it says here. One is allowed to place fish and meat on the same table because it's dangerous to eat them together. One be careful not to do so. And many shuls. No, it's sakana. It's more than his minhag. First of all, it's brought down in halacha, and number two, also it's actually brought down in Shulchan Aruch. Kufa in Zayin, we brought it down in Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch Kufa in Zayin. It's remember, chamina sakanta misura. Sakana is worse than an isur.
But it was not on Alam Israel. It was a certain thing. It was very specific on the.
No, it's on all Klalisa. No, we're not talking fish and milk.
No, I understand.
We're not talking fish and milk. Fish and meat. Gemara מפורשת. קשה לצרעת. זה גמרא. For sure. It's brought down Shulchan Aruch. Kufa in Zayin.
מה זה ויצרת?
Yeah. That's why there's מים אמצעים.
מה זה מים?
מים אמצעים is like not מים ראשונים, not מים אחרונים, מים אמצעים. Between fish and meat. Some people do מים אמצעים. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people. Mayim emtzaim, middle waters. In between fish and meat, they'll come and on the they will also do it. But that you don't have to spit it out. You just drink. Yeah, they do it with the fingers, everything. Here it says at many Bate Knesiot on Shabbat morning, right? He says, you guys listening, there's a fleshik meal, there's a meaty kiddush, and they have herring or other fish. Right? So he says, in his opinion, you will be allowed to place the fish and meat on the same table. So that's what we do here. Nobody ever realized that. Now it is important though. No, for sure. Right? All the time. You have here fish.
Yeah.
You know, like for example, Shabbat morning. Sometimes you have tamchut, you have tuna sandwiches or salmon, right? Sandwiches and all the things. And then you have the kibbeh, the meat, and all the chamin and all those things. But you have fish and meat. Understand? You have tuna, whatever it is. This is certainly what?
And one after another one in different plate?
No. Same table, you're never allowed to. Remember. Right? He says it's true in Kiddushin where the food is placed at the serving table. Right? The Shulchan Aruch already passed in the prohibition, there's no problem. So another heter is that it's a serving table. Meaning like the majority of these Kiddushin, it's a serving table. It's not really supposed to be where you're eating at the table. Meaning you're not sitting down to eat. You serve yourself from the table and then you're eating, whether it's standing or somewhere else, basically. However, though the Kav HaChaim paskins, that you're not allowed to eat fish at the same table as a friend that's eting meat. Kav HaChaim is number 7.
In the Seudot,
in the wedding,
you're right. Yeah, right. 100%. Tehacha chashina. Look at number 7. Kav HaChaim. Tehacha chashina Hashem yishkach v'yochal bilti yediyah detaru be'achilato. You're busy eating, so you're going to forget. ועל כן נרד יש להחמיר ולעשות הפסק להקרא ואין הפסק בזה. Make a הפסק. You have to make a pasek, right? Do a eked. That's a Kav HaChaim. So the Kav HaChaim says you're not allowed to. The Yabia Omer, though, does not accept the Chumrah of the Kav HaChaim. And he says you're allowed to. Even if the individual is eating by himself and he plans to eat both meat and fish. So imagine, I could put here, let's say the fish, and here the meat right beside each other. And I'm going to eat first the fish and first the meat, or first the meat and then first the fish, whichever one you want. Right? There's no difference. Yeah?
It's okay.
Yeah. There's no problem. So you're allowed to. Not like the Kav HaChaim. Okay, that's what you just said. Not like the Kav HaChaim. The Kav HaChaim says you're not allowed to put them on the same table. Ad kedei kach. But the Rav Ovadia argued, and he said, no, we don't have this chumrah. It's okay. No problem. What about now an unreliable hechsher? What does that mean?
Can we dance in different... Can we decide for ourselves? In this I go to the shita, in this I go to...
No.
It's not like a selech harav.
No, it's a little bit different. Here, it's a little bit different. Here, it's not...
Can we do it or no?
Not always. It depends what. In this case, you could go like Rav Ovadia, obviously. Okay? Anyway, the Kav HaChaim is a chumrah. If you want to be machmir, you could always be machmir. The question is, can you be lenient? Right? So again, here, if you always go like Rav Ovadia, you go like Rav Ovadia.
There is room to be lenient.
Yeah. Unreliable hechsher. This is an interesting one. Are you allowed to eat dairy at the same table as your friend who he wants to eat meat if you're machmir not to eat that hechsher? You understood the question? One more time. Your friend is eating meat, but it's not a reliable hechsher for you. You don't eat that hechsher. That hashgacha.
We go back like 5 minutes ago.
So the question is, right, would that be permitted then that I could eat my milk on the same table as you? Because I'm not going to eat your meat anyway. It would seem that according to the Avnei Yashveh, he would still need a eker. Why? Because it's your personal chumrah. And if it's a personal chumrah, right, of course you need a eker. But the overall halacha separating between meat and dairy still applies. Right? So that was the Avnei Yashveh. But there's going to be a shoot v'darashta v'chakarta. Look at the shoot. Number 8, page 11 on the bottom. V'hu adin binyan hechsher mepukpak. You've got a hechsher which is questionable. Shu eno ochel mimenu. You don't need it. She'imu makpid gamur. If he's mamash makpid, he's only going to have for the best. For sure, you're not going to eat it, and it's going to be mutar. But let's say it's shat dachak, and you would eat from it, so then you're not allowed to. Meaning, again, we're going back.
What? It was shuv.
Where are you? Havale. Havale. It is to him. Havale, which they become badil. What does that mean? So here we come and we see that it's something incredible. It's coming out, right? That what? It's coming out something incredible. That the fact that he never eats it. So this, by the way, is like the oil Yaakov. That means it depends on the type of the allergies. You remember that it was mamash sakarat nefashot, or if it's just he could have it and then just pop a pill. So here, what we're saying though is that are you allowed to come and eat from this? So he says if it's going to be that you will never touch this hashgacha, you're allowed to. If it's going to be that beshata dachak, right? You would, so then that's fine. Okay, what about leftover half-eaten food? Right? So he says like this: are you allowed to eat at a dairy table where there's a half-eaten piece of schnitzel? Yeah. So now again, the dairy table, there's a half piece of schnitzel over there. Can I eat there or not? So there's going to be number 9. Look at number 9, Rav Nebenzahl. Right? This is oil.
People finish the plates.
Which one?
A lot of people.
Fine, okay. It says like this: נראה שמותר לאחד לאכול גבינה שולחן שמונח עליו גם חתיכת שניצל של מישהו אחר אכל ממנו וכעת רואים את סימני שיניים על החתיכה כיוון שהוא מאוס ובדין ממנו והכל לפי עניין ויש לדון זה בכל מקרה בנפרד. He wants to say like this. He says, ריבונו של עולם, it's not even your schnitzel. Somebody came, they ate a half a schnitzel. They come and they put it on the table.
It's your son.
Okay, fine. If you're your son, then you're right. Then you have a problem. But let's say it's not your son. It's somebody else. Right? You're in a Bet Knesset. Now we're eating thing, and somebody beforehand and they put it there. So you're not gonna. So therefore, there he says there's no problem, even though it depends obviously on who, what, v'chul v'chul. Now we're going to speak about the heker. Okay, page 4, heker. We're almost done. Yeah, heker. In the previous section, okay, we discussed the prohibition of eating dairy at a table with someone eating meat. In this section, now we're going to learn about the heker, which means the recognition when you have to stop. So the Mishnah in Gemara Chulin, look at number 10. The Gemara says, Lo shanu ela she'en makirin zeh. This is what Ronen was speaking about before. Because the beginning just says, Rabbi says, you could have 2 people eating on the same table because they don't know each other. And there's no problem. We don't suspect it. But when it says in the name of Shmuel, they don't know each other. But if they know each other, it's asur. Why? Because nowhere in the world I'm going to come to you if I don't know you, and I'm just going to take from your plate. Where are you going? It's like, what's going on?
Potato chip that you're eating.
Exactly. Nobody's going to. So that for sure. So that's going to be fine. Okay. So let's see what it says over here. So it says like this. It says that was the Mishnah in Chulin. Now we're going to see the Gemara. The Gemara in Chulin comes and it says, each one is coming from different places. Each one comes one with the meat, one with the fish. There's en choshim. ולא אסרו אלא בתפיסה אחת. So says the Gemara, תפיסה אחת סלקא דאיתך, אלא כאין תפיסה אחת. It's like תפיסה אחת. So now we're going to see what this means. Look in the number 4 on the bottom, page 4 on the bottom. The Gemara elaborates that if 2 people are eating בתפיסה אחת, when they place their foods in the same bundle, that's when it's a תפיסה אחת, so then they may not share the same table. Right? The Gemara asks, if the meat and the cheese are touching each other, obviously it's a sul. What do you mean תפיסה אחת? אתה שמת אותם ביחד? איך יכול להיות? How are you going to come and you're going to put them together? So he says, the Gemara answers, no, it's ke'en tfisa achat. There's a Tosafot there. And the Tosafot says, v'im yesh davar mafsik lo avi ken tfisa achat, v'yech yidam ekugom di'ika gove bene bene. Right? Manichin lechem o kolkan o shar kelim nafsik benatayim o achel al mapa acheret avi ken shte tfisot. So he comes and he says like this. He says that if they know each other, there's no heker to remind them, it's going to be prohibited. If there's a heker that acts as a reminder not to share the food, then it's similar to the food being in separate bundles. So Tosafot explains that the heker can be something elevated like a loaf of bread, jug, or other vessels, or even separate mats. Yeah. The fact that I'm eating on one mat and you're eating on a milky mat, you're on a meaty, whichever one, that's already enough. Shulchan Aruch Paskins, right, and Siv Bet, like the Gemara above, that 2 strangers do not need a heker, but if they know each other, even if they're enemies, they need a heker when they're eating together. Okay? Even if they're enemies. Right? But remember, on food, there's no enemies. Right? Everyone's al attack. Anyway, they're al attack, they're always attacking each other. However, If there's a heker between them, such as eating on separate placemats or placing a bread between them, they're allowed to eat at the same table. The Ramah qualifies the bread may only be used as a heker if you don't eat from it, because then it's a heker. But if they eat from it, it's part of the meal. Meaning like this, if I'm going to have the bread there, and I'm eating from the bread, it has to be something that you're not using. So if you're not using, that's a heker. Some people put the watch. Question is, is that good enough or not? Right? But again, that's what
if the watch will stay.
Huh? The Rama adds that if both parties are pouring from a jug, and maybe used as heker only if the jug is not commonly used that is placed between them. Therefore, bottles of Coke or seltzer that are usually served at a meal cannot be used as heker. But a weekday meal with a decanter that is usually not brought to the table, right, can be used as heker. Even if both diners are pouring, both diners are pouring from the decanter. Additionally, a candelabra or other vessels that are commonly not found on the table, again, is going to be a heker. So now we're going to speak about practical applications, right? We have to get to Siman Peitet, right? He says like this: practical applications, sitting far away. The patash, paskins, that if two parties, right, are sitting at opposite ends of the table, such that neither can reach each other with the same food, you don't need a heker. So that's heter number one. So for example, from us to, where we are now, I can't reach you. Yeah, actually with Ronan, yes, you just blind enough. Yeah, but usually, right, I can't reach him. Yeah, so if you can't reach him, what happens? No problem. Next, other guests at the table. The patash brings down a masab in yaminu paskins, that if you're at a meal with many people, a heker is not needed. The source from this is Ilchot Nida, where the halacha says that a wife, right, which is a nida, is allowed to eat with her husband together at the same table, and no heker is needed. That was according to the Rav Chida, if you remember. So he says over here, however, though, if they're eating at a meal with other people, many poskim hold that a heker is not needed, and the same would apply to basar v'chalav. The Badash one argues that eating with other people on the table only acts as a heker in Ilchot Nida because it's going to prevent the couple from being intimate. But with regard to meat and milk, having more people does not ensure that nobody's going to start eating meat or the milk. Meaning, what does that mean? Okay, they're not going to fool around, or hopefully they're not going to fool around in front of other people. You understand? But here, what do you have? What's it going to help? Right? What's it going to help? Yeah. So again, it's not going to help in such a scenario. Okay. What about a heker dimension and placement? Does it have to be like a certain dimension, placement? So Yalkut Yosef, number 12. I was on page 13 now, on the Elmaleh. Right? Rabbi tzarich laniach et heker be'emtza b'neihem v'lo b'tzad hashulchan. It has to be in the middle of the table, not at the end. It has to be between them. So that's what it says over here. Dafka b'davar gavoa k'tzat v'nira le'en. Says the Yalkut Yosef, it has to be tall that you could see it. It has to be something that you could see it. So that's what he says here. The Yalkut Yosef, the Badei Shulchan, infer from the language of Shulchan Aruch that the heker needs to be placed between both diners and not on the side. Additionally, based on the Tosafot, the heker needs to have some elevation, unless it's a placemat. Therefore, a heker placed on the side of the diners will not suffice. And similarly, placing a ring, piece of paper, credit card, plate, key, right, or even between the diners will not suffice unless it has, because it lacks height. Unless the diners eat on separate placemats. The Yalkut adds based on the Shulchan Aruch that separate placemats do suffice because that is viewed as eating on a different table. But just using different plates do not suffice because they are not tall and they're not separated between the two diners, and therefore they're not going to be used on, and they are being used on the same table. So again, Davka placemats was ki'ilu, even though you're a tabeota shulchan, it's ki'ilu, you're on a different shulchan. But other than placemats, always you have to have gova. Yeah, you have to have something which is tall, something which catches the eye. Okay? What about folding the tablecloth? Look, I'm going to take this part, fold it, and that's it. So he says, the Badei Shulchan paskins that if you are at a fleshig meal and you want to eat the dairy, or vice versa, folding the part of the tablecloth that hangs off the side of the table back onto the table will act as a placemat heker. But folding extra fabric under the table in a way is not noticeable is not a heker. So only if you put it, it now becomes like a placemat. But if not, it doesn't work. What about a baby bottle? Right now, this is a very interesting one. Why? Because do you have a separate baby bottle for meat and milk? What do you do exactly? So it says here many times those who are blessed with children will feed their baby bottles at Shabbat table and then place the bottle on the table. Yeah. If the bottle still contains some milk, are you allowed to place it on the table or not? As mentioned in the Ramah Paskin, the bottle is not normally placed on the table, can be used as a heker, even if the parties drink from it. Therefore, you are allowed to place the baby bottle with milk on the Shabbat table for two main reasons. Number one, the Ramah taught that the bottle is not normally placed on the table, and the shape of the bottle is different and acts as a heker. Number two, adults will never drink from it. It's just like being allergic to milk. This is the psak of the Chaya Levi. However, though Rav Nevinsal, he was brought down, and the would be machmir in such a case, because sometimes you would take a sip just to make sure it's not hot. I've never taken a sip. I always just put it over here. You're supposed to test over here, but I don't know. Maybe somebody will take a taste. I don't know. I don't ask too many questions. Eating alone with children. Yeah. He says like this. Badei Shulchan number 13. He says, Dafka, looking at 13 and page 13. 13, page 13. Yeah, double 13. It says over here, Dafka b'shnayim hu demani yekesh, yishtzeh le'akeh gam shmirat chavero. Right? He says over here, but what about if it's going to be the children? So it says like this. Who paskins that if you're eating a piece of cheese by yourself and there's meat on the table, a heker will not help because in his opinion, two lines of defense are needed. You need the heker on the table, which is a reminder not to eat the meat, and the other party at the table who will remind you not to eat the meat. When eating alone, there's only one line in defense. The heker, which is not enough. Meaning you need heker plus da'at. You need heker plus somebody that's going to remind you. So when there are two people, you have heker plus somebody in front of you that's going to tell you, hey, you're eating meat or you're eating milk, and go vice versa. If you're eating by yourself, there's only one line of defense. There's no two lines of defense. There's only the heker. So he says, right? However, though, that argues, and he says, no, even when eating by yourself, heker suffices. Okay, so he says like this. He says, based on the fly, the Yekut Yosef, number 14, paskins, right? So he paskins that if you're eating with a child and the child wants dairy and you're eating meat, a heker is not enough because the child cannot be trusted to remind you. And therefore, you have to be machmir. So says the Yekut Yosef, you have to be machmir. Your son wants to eat with you. Again, we're talking about a child under bar mitzvah, right? And you can't. The heker is not enough. So he says, the Chokhmat Adam comes and he says that you could use a katan for heker. The B'dei HaShulchan also paskins that it might be stringent, right? But when needed, one can be lenient in both cases. What about a sefer? Can I use a book as a heker? I'm going to open up a book and I use it as heker. The Oziel Yaakov quotes Rav Neventzal. So Yeshiv li b'tshuvat hagon of Neventzal she'asur laniach hasefer l'shem kach. But if munach sham kvar, meaning he says to put a book as a heker does not work. But in the kvar shama ze beseder. That's what he says. He says it's disrespectful for the sefer.
Sefer lo kodesh.
Okay. Sefer lo kodesh al shulchan Shabbat. No, lav davka Shabbat. Okay, fine. Airplanes and other vehicles. If you're flying with your friend and he sits next to him, do you need a heker? If you're eating bagels and cream cheese and he's going to have a salami sandwich. Rav Vosner comes in number 16, so this is the next page. Rav Vosner comes and he says, Valken, kishenosim be'airplane. Look how he spells airplane. You have it? Page 14. Right? V'yoshvim ze etzel ze. Right? Mutar le'echol ze v'ze v'ze. You're allowed to eat it, no problem. Achen im natru mapa lachat shel shtei hashulchanos v'gim ze leze v'day yav k'shulchan. For sure it's considered one shulchan. So he said, meaning that if they put a mapa on it, then it's one. But if not, each one is considered a separate table. So there's no problem. Okay? The Oziel Yaakov paskins, the two people traveling in a car and a bus, that they're eating meat and other dairy, do not need a heker because they hold the food the entire time and they don't share a table. Chazal only forbid when you're sharing a table. The last one, salt shakers. The Raman Sibet comes and he concludes with 3 halachot. Although a pitcher is not usually placed on the table as an heker, neither party may drink directly from it because doing so, you're going to leave leftover of the meat and the dairy together. Number 2, both diners may not share the same loaf of bread because their hands are going directly with the meat and the milk to the bread. Number 3, it's customary also to set aside salt containers for meat and dairy because when they dip it, right, it goes into the salt. Obviously, here we're talking about the old, when you dip the thing into the salt, not
your finger.
Yeah, exactly. So the Rivot Ephraim, not the shaker, exactly, not the salt shakers. So he says that the Rivot Ephraim paskins that you only need separate salt shakers for dairy and meat when using an open salt shaker, since food are dripped directly into the salt. However, there's no need for separate salt commonly used today, which have a porous spout that prevents the food from entering the holes. If one uses for both of them meat and milk, there's no problem. He just has to wipe off the top, which often accumulates from the grime. He concludes that some are careful to have separate ones. It would seem that the same rules for shakers apply today to ketchup bottles and all the like, which are also usually used also for meat and also for dairy, but are open at the top, will have the same halacha.